Hello and welcome to Drunk on Tea. Today it's the first episode of Series 2 of the 5 paint challenge. I attempt to paint a model using just 5 paints. For this video I'm just going to be using Abaddon Black, White Scar, Retributor Armour, Leadbelcher and Mephiston Red. And here's the model I'm going to be painting up today, which I'm going to paint up in the heretical style of the Black Legion. So the first thing I've done is I've primed the model black, as this will give us a nice smooth, even base coat for the rest of our colours to work from. The first colour I'm coming in with is some Abaddon Black. I'm going to paint this all over the model. It may seem a bit strange that I primed the model black, but now I'm painting over it with Abaddon Black. The reason for this is that the finish of a primer and a regular paint are a little bit different. So by painting the entire model now with some Abaddon Black, if I make any mistakes later or need to tidy up, it'll be really easy just to tidy up with a little bit of Abaddon Black without it being noticeable. So just make sure you coat all of the model with a layer of Abaddon Black. And with that Abaddon Black applied, you can see we've now got a smooth finish all over the model. It's now time to start painting some details. First thing I'm coming in with is Mephiston Red. And using this, I'm going to paint the casing to the gun. So I'm just going to be really careful, just catch the casing to the bolt gun on this Chaos Space Marine. The reason I'm painting the casing red is to break up this black colour, which is going to be the main colour of the model. So I'm being really careful around all the areas of armour and details like that. Don't want to get any of this red over those details. But by painting the casing to the gun red, it will give us that nice retro 2nd edition look of bolt guns and break up that black a little bit and add some interest to this model. So just be really careful and just make sure you catch the casing to the gun with a couple of layers of Mephiston Red. And with that gun casing painted, you can see it added a splash of colour to the model. So the next thing I was going to pick out is a lot of the metallic details. So for this I'm going to be coming in with Leadbelcher. I'm going to carefully pick out all of the details like the undersuit. So I'm going to carefully pick out all of these ridged areas here, showing through the armour panels with a little bit of Leadbelcher. This will also work to break up that black colour and add some interest to the model. Be really careful around the black armour. Just pick out all of the undersuit with a couple of layers of Leadbelcher. If you do make any mistakes, you can come back in with Abaddon Black and tidy up. I'm also going to pick out any of the areas of chainmail on the model as well. So this one here has got some hanging around his waist. The different Chaos Space Marine sculpts have different areas of chainmail and fabric and things like that on them. Just make sure you pick out any chainmail with some Leadbelcher. I'm also picking out any of the trinkety backpack details and things like these orbs here on the back. Making sure I pick these out with some Leadbelcher as well. If there's any pipes or cabling on the model, catching all of these with some Leadbelcher. Once again, being really careful around all of the other black details. And I'm also picking out any of the detailing on the bolt gun as well. So the muzzle, magazine housing, areas like that. Just making sure I pick all of these out with a couple of layers of Leadbelcher. So there aren't a lot of base coats to apply to this model because so much of it's black. So it really is worth taking the time on these details to make sure you pick them all out, get a nice solid coat, and really break up that black and add some interest to the model. And after all that Leadbelcher has been applied, you can see we've picked out those areas with silver. It's broken up that black a bit more and added interest to the model. So now the next step is I'm going to paint all of that trim on the Chaos Space Marine. For this I'll be using Retributor Armour. I'm just going to make sure I pick out all of the raised details of trim on the Chaos Space Marine. So I think picking out trim is going to be the theme for this series of the 5 paint challenge. So many of these Chaos Space Marines have so much trim. To take your time, work your way around the model, pick out all of these areas of trim, try and be nice and neat around all the other black areas. If you do make any mistakes, you can tidy back up with some Abaddon Black afterwards. Just make sure you take your time, you work your way around the model, and you carefully pick out all of these raised details of trim with some Retributor Armour. Over the course of this series, I am going to show some different ways of painting trim, different methods to make it easier to get different results. But for this first one, for the Black Legion, there's only really one way to paint the trim, and that's just to very carefully work your way around with some Retributor Armour, picking out all of the trim, making it stand out gold. I'm also picking out any of the details here, like this marking on his leg, same as anything that's sculpted into the shoulder pad as well. I'm going to pick out all of these with some Retributor Armour as well. These Chaos Space Marines really do love their ornate armour. It does make them look really interesting once they're finished being painted, but oh boy does it make the painting process slow. And after you've picked out all of that trim, I'm just going to pick out the casings to the bullets. And down here, just picking this out with a little bit of Retributor Armour as well. And once all of that Retributor Armour has been applied, you've picked out all of that trim, that is all of the base coats applied to the Chaos Space Marine. So the next step is I'm going to apply some shading. For this, I'm coming in with some Abaddon Black. I'm going to place some onto my palette. I'm going to make my own black wash. So I'm just applying the Abaddon Black to my palette and thinning it down with a lot of water. Because this is just pure black paint, you don't want this to be strong at all, otherwise you'll just paint everything black. So really add a lot of water so it's really thin, really flows smoothly off of the brush, and will sink into all of the recesses and details, while losing some of the strength to the black paint. So keep adding water until it's really, really watery. So if you're not limiting yourself to 5 paints, Nuln Oil is great to use here. And once I've got that paint thinned down, I'm just applying it all over the model. Doesn't matter about getting it over the black, obviously, because it won't show up against the Abaddon Black we've already painted. But make sure you apply it all over the Space Marine, all over the silver, the red, and the gold, so it sinks into those recesses, adds some definition, and will really bring out all of the details on the model.
If you're enjoying the video, please press like. If you want more videos, press the subscribe button and ring the notification bell. If you would like to support the channel and become a member, please press the join button down below.
And after that black shade has dried, you can see how it's added definition around a lot of the details, sunk into the recesses, really emphasise any shadows on the model. So now it's time to start doing some highlighting to the model. First of these highlights, I'm coming in with some Abaddon Black and White Scar. So I'm going to mix these two together on my palette. So I'm taking some Abaddon Black here, washing my brush off, and then applying some White Scar. So it's going to be about 40% White Scar to 60% Abaddon Black. Going to mix these two colours together. It's going to create something similar to Mechanica Standard Grey. Obviously, it's always thin the paints down with a little bit of water as well. With this, I'm going to highlight the belt and the pouch on the model. So I'm just applying a small edge highlight to the raised details on the belt and the pouch. So we'll just add some interest to these areas, make them stand out, and look slightly different to their armour. With the belt, and the pouch picked out, the next step is I'm going to highlight any of the sharp points on the black power armour. So for this, I'm just adding some more white scar into the mix we did for the belt and the pouch. So now it will be slightly more white scar than there was Abaddon Black in the mix. So give us a colour closer to Dawnstone. So just mix that extra white into the mix. And now any of these sharp raised details of black armour, I'm just applying a thin edge highlight of this mix on all of these areas. You want to keep these lines nice and thin and just pick out some of the sharpest points of the black armour and give the impression of light catching off sharp edges. So just be really careful when you pick these areas out. You don't need to do all over the armour. Just find some of the sharpest points, areas that light would catch, and just apply a thin edge highlight of this mix on all of these areas, just to give the impression of light catching on the edges of all of these armour panels. Throughout the rest of this series we'll find other ways to highlight black armour as well, but for the Black Legion I find it's best to just do it the traditional way with edge highlighting on all the sharp areas of black. It really does make the armour pop, but it still gives them the impression of a solid black armour. And once that mix has been applied, you can see how it's added interest to some of the flatter areas of the armour, really made all of those panels stand out. So next thing I'm going to paint are the eyes. For this I'm coming in with Mephiston Red. I'm just going to very carefully sink some of this into the eye lenses of the Space Marine. To be really careful around all the other colours, just picking out those eyes with a bit of Mephiston Red. I'm also going to do the same to the Eye of Horus on his shoulder, just picking this out with Mephiston Red as well. And with the eyes painted, added some character to the model, but there are some highlights we can apply to make these look a little bit more interesting. So I'm coming in with a 50-50 mix of Mephiston Red and White Scar. Again, putting a little bit of Mephiston Red on my palette, adding some White Scar, mixing the two colours together, so I get a colour that isn't pink, but is a lighter shade of red than we use for the base layers. And for this I'm just applying a thin line at the bottom of each of the eye lenses. Being really careful, just catching the very bottom with a thin line of this mix. I was doing the same to the eye on the shoulder pad as well, just applying a line going around the bottom of the eye. And also using this mix I'm going to edge highlight the casing on his bolt gun as well. So keep this line nice and thin, but just work your way around the casing to that bolt gun, applying a thin edge highlight of this light red mix around all of the edges to add interest to that bolt gun, tie it in with the rest of the model as well. After that mix has been applied, there's just one final step to apply to the model, and that will finish off the eyes. For this I'm coming in with some White Scar, and I'm just adding a very small spot of white in the very back corner of each of the eye lenses. This will look like a reflection point of light, really add character to those eyes. I'm also doing it on the eye on the shoulder pad as well, just adding a small spot of White Scar. And with that White Scar applied, that is all of the Black Legion Chaos Space Marine painted, but there's one final step just to finish this model off. And that's going to be with some Abaddon Black. I'm just going to paint the base. So we're going to paint all over the base with a couple of layers of Abaddon Black, just so we get a smooth, even finish all over the base. make sure you paint the rim as well. This will just tidy the model up. If you've got any paint over the base for any other colours, this will hide that. It will just give you a nice finished look to your Chaos Space Marine. Obviously normally I'd use texture paints and things like that, but with only 5 paints, the only option I've got is just a solid black base for my Chaos Space Marine. And with that base painted up, that is how to paint Black Legion Space Marine using just 5 paints. So thank you very much for watching. Please let me know in the comments down below, are there any other Chaos Legions you would like to see me paint using just 5 paints? But don't forget to like and subscribe, and happy painting!